Your buildings, by Rita Joe. Your buildings, tall, alien, cover the land. Unfeeling concrete smothers without lines, like water to the sun. No breezes blow through standing trees. The scent of pine lightens my burden. I see your buildings rising skyward, majestic, over the trails where once men walked, significant rulers of this land, who still hold their aboriginal title in their hearts, by traditions known through eons of time. Relearning our culture is not difficult, because those trails I remember and their meaning I understand. While skyscrapers hide the heavens, they can fall.
So we just have read Your Buildings by Rita Joe, published in 1798, a four-stanza poem, later published in Native Poetry in Canada. So this poem has been identified as a piece of indigenous literature. But what is indigenous literature? Some academics have tried to define this term, though it's not an easy task. And in his introduction to All My Relations, Thomas King gives some elements that could help a reader identifying Aboriginal literature. I think the most important of the terms he provides is interfusional. Interfusional is blending the oral tradition with the written one. One can do this through rhythm, patterns, syntax, and sounds to add some performative elements. Performativity is another very important element in indigenous literature. We later see how some of these elements are visible in the poem by Rita Joe. Another term introduced by Thomas King, but now in his text Godzilla versus Postcolonial, is associational literature, which most often describes a native community. It is talking about the native communities, basically. Nature is also very present in the indigenous texts. There is a responsibility with this universal family. There is a responsibility from the native communities with the nature and with the land they work. Community is also present in Aboriginal texts. It is a place that has been inhabited for generations. The landscape becomes enlivened by a sense of group and a family history, according to Thomas King. So now let's go to the poem. There is a sense of alienation in Your Buildings by Rita Joe. She talks about your buildings. It's something that is not hers. It is something that where she doesn't belong to. Your buildings, tall, alien, cover the land, unfeeling concrete smoothers. So this gray concrete is something that just does not provide a feeling to her like nature could do. And if we skip later to the second stanza, I see your buildings rising skyward, majestic, over the trails where once men walked, significant rulers of this land. So she recognizes an identity with the trails where once men walked, and not with the buildings that are yours, not mine and hers. The poetic voice is very clear with the fact that she does not belong to the place of your buildings. There is a nostalgia for the natural world that the women comes from. Indigenous culture has been left aside and their communities have been broken by this accidental world. And the poetic voice just doesn't fit in this urban modern life that she describes with your buildings. And there is also a reivindication of identity. She says again, significant rulers of this land who still hold the Aboriginal title in their hearts. She's talking very specifically about these Aboriginal communities where she once belonged to. There is a remembrance of the culture through history also in the third stanza. Relearning our culture is not difficult because those trails I remember and their meaning I understand. So she knows where she comes from. She can recognize her origin. She also recognizes the responsibility that this origin has with her. She knows the history. She knows how her community has been replaced by this urban, modern, occidental life, how it has been forgotten the responsibility with nature. Um, and this history that she knows um, gives her the identity. So there is also performativity in this poem. It's another element very important that uh, we have just said Thomas King writes about in his introduction. Performativity is part also of interfunctionality, and the video we just saw where we read the poem and we saw some landscapes and some pictures of the urban life shows how this poem is very visual. She says your buildings, your skyscrapers, and one can immediately see those tall buildings rising above oneself. Um, like one can see the urban life full of lights, but also very dark because the only light is artificial. And the gray landscapes that urban life brings, and they contrast absolutely with the nature, with the land that native people used to work, with how this natural life has been disappearing due to the urbanization of the world. It brings the pictures of crowded cities that accidental men have built where indigenous people used to live. So, in conclusion, the poem by Rita Joe shows the life of an indigenous person that recognizes the history of her community, which is also very important again for the indigenous literature, recognizing uh, where do we come from and how this place is being forgotten by many but not by us because we belong to that place. Through elements in this poem such as community, tradition, responsibility with nature, and performativity, the reader can easily match this poem to the Aboriginal tradition. There's, as we just saw, there are elements from Aboriginal literature that one can see in your buildings. Four stanzas make great work, um, bringing all together the sense of the community, the tradition, like how communities used to work the land, the responsibility with nature that has been absolutely left aside by these occidental modern cultures, and the performativity. There are visual elements that help us seeing some pictures while we read the poem. So basically that's all about Your Buildings by Rita Joe. And if you want to see where does this information come from, or you want to know more about the text like Thomas King's text, I'm going to leave a bibliography at the end of this video.